college football fans. Welcome to another edition of College Football Report. So we're getting into the nitty-gritty of conference championships, starting to figure out how the postseason is going to look. Let's go ahead and start with our contender and pretender.
Contender and Pretender.
Contender this week, maybe a season-long achievement here, but Mr. Jadeveon Clowney, South Carolina defensive end. Jadeveon Clowney finishes the Clemson game with 4.5 sacks and 7 tackles, leading him to a season total of 13 sacks. Not too bad for a sophomore. He's a finalist for the Nagurski and Hendricks Awards and a first-team All-American. If you've gotten to see Jadeveon Clowney play this year, it's even more impressive than his first year. Just an absolute athletic freak from the defensive end. Not only with the size and strength, but with the speed and the ability to get to the passer. Jadeveon Clowney is just, well, the word beast gets a little overused sometimes, but you can't overuse it when it comes to him. He's an amazing football player and has a great future not only on Saturdays, but also on Sundays. Congratulations to you, Mr. Clowney. Pretender this week, the ACC. And there's no sermon here, there's no soapbox. Let me just read off the scores. Georgia 42, Georgia Tech 10. Florida 37, Florida State 26. South Carolina 27, Clemson 17. And finally, Vanderbilt 55, Wake Forest 21. The ACC finishes the season with only 5 teams with a winning record, 2 of which are on probation and will not be eligible for the postseason. I guess in the way of good news, basketball season starts soon.
Games to watch.
Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at this week's conference championships. Conference championships are going to have a lot to say about who goes where in the bowl season and who's going to make up the BCS this year. So let's start with the Big East. Now, the Big East doesn't have a proper conference championship game, but it does have a game tonight on Thursday night that will decide who the Big East representative in the BCS will be. The game is Rutgers versus Louisville in Piscataway, New Jersey. And I like the Rutgers Scarlet Knights in this one. I like the defense that the Knights play. Louisville has all the momentum they had going earlier in the season has just really been lost over the last couple of weeks. I like Rutgers at home. I like Rutgers' motivation. A Rutgers win is an automatic berth in the BCS. If Louisville wins, they still have to hope that Cincinnati beats Connecticut, and then they have to hope that they come out number 1 in the BCS rankings among Big East teams. I think Rutgers just has more to play for. They have a home crowd, and I believe they're going to get the win. For the ACC Championship, number 13 FSU taking on Georgia Tech. You've got a Florida State team, an 11 game winning season. 10-game winner this year against 6-6 Georgia Tech team. Florida State's going to win it. There's not much more to say. I believe some of the reason that they can't give tickets away to the ACC championship game is just such a mismatch. I think Florida State will win this one going away. Big 12 championship, number 6. Not really a championship in the proper sense, but Kansas State can clinch the Big 12 and their berth in the BCS with a win against number 18 Texas. And I like Kansas State to do it. Despite their hiccup against Baylor, I think Kansas State is one of the best teams in the country. I think Colin Klein is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. And I just haven't been impressed by Texas at all. And I'm wondering where the Texas of 5 or 6 years ago is gone. But I look to Kansas State to wrap up the Big 12 in this one. Pac-12 championship, number 16 UCLA versus number 8 Stanford. I like Stanford in this. I like Stanford's mistake-free offense. I like that defense. I believe they'll be able to hold UCLA to a manageable amount of points, and I believe they'll be able to get the win and go back to the Rose Bowl. Finally, the SEC, the play-in game for the national championship. The number 2 Alabama Crimson Tide taking on the number 3 Georgia Bulldogs. Now listen, I'm pretty excited about this one, not only because it's a play-in game essentially for the national championship, but I think it's going to be the best and most even matchup of an SEC championship in the last couple years. I believe there's a fashionable pick to pick the Bulldogs in this one, but I have to stick with the Alabama Crimson Tide. Quarterback Aaron Murray for the Georgia Bulldogs has shown that if you can put some pressure on him, he tends to make some mistakes. I believe Alabama, and behind that defensive line, will be able to create all kinds of havoc for him, and I believe he's going to end up throwing some picks and going to the ground a good bit. And on the offensive side of the ball, I think Alabama will be able to run the ball, be able to put the ball in the air when they need to, and I believe they'll end up picking up the win and going on to face Notre Dame in the national championship.
Ask TJ.
For our Ask TJ segment this week, we're just going to field a few random questions from the field. We're going to start with a question from Justin in New Prospect, South Carolina. Thanks for the question, Justin. How would you sum up North Greenville's season under a new coaching staff after last year's playoff run in the Division II playoffs? Well, if you look at North Greenville's 5-6 season just as a 5-6 season, well, yes, it is a little disappointing, especially after that 5-game losing streak to begin the season. But you have to take a few things into consideration. Take into consideration the loss of Willie Corn at quarterback. Willie Corn, a Division I talent who found his way to North Greenville and really had an incredible season last year. Trying to replace him, no easy task. You're also looking at a new coaching staff up there at North Greenville. And also, consider some of the offensive leaders. On the offensive side of the ball is where the Crusaders really struggled. Your leading passer, freshman. Your leading rusher, freshman. And your leading receiver is also a junior. And so, yes, you should be a little bit frustrated by a 5-6 season, especially after all the success that the Crusaders had last year in the playoffs. However, be encouraged. The future looks bright for the Crusaders. The new coaching staff will get things figured out. The offense will continue to grow and will continue to click. And I think the Crusaders have a lot to look forward to in years to come. Now, from Lindsay in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. How long can my Buckeyes look forward to beating that team up north? Well, if this season is any indicator, Lindsay, I think you can look forward to that for a long time. Ohio State finishes a year under probation at 12-0. You know, if it wasn't for a few free tattoos on the arms of some Buckeye players, you're probably talking about Ohio State in the national championship, maybe against Notre Dame, a matchup of years gone by. As it stands, Urban Meyer looks like he knows exactly what he's doing in Columbus, and I think you can look for a lot bigger things from Urban Meyer's Buckeyes as the years go ahead. So I doubt you'll be having to say hail to the victors anytime soon, Lindsay. And finally, a question from Tommy in Lexington, South Carolina, going off of our contender from this week. Will Jadeveon Clowney win the Heisman in 2013? Listen, I don't presume to tell you who's going to win the Heisman in 2012. That's a political process, and if you really think that it's about the best player in football, well, you're dead wrong. Who knows what it is. But as far as being a contender for next year, I think Jadeveon Clowney will absolutely be a Heisman frontrunner going into 2013. I believe you'll probably see Mr. Clowney from South Carolina and Johnny Football, Johnny Manziel, Heisman or no this year. I think he'll be looking at it as another Heisman frontrunner going into 2013. And I believe as much as a difference maker that Jadeveon Clowney is on the field, I believe he's worthy of some Heisman consideration.
Hometown Heroes.
For a wrap-up segment for our hometown heroes, you have both South Carolina and Clemson finishing with 10-2 records. Clemson finishes 7-1 in the ACC. Carolina finishes 6-2 in the SEC. And both seasons have a little bit of disappointment for both fan bases. For South Carolina, you beat Georgia in such a dominating fashion, 35-7, and you have a lot of national title talk kind of swirling around you, and then you follow that up with a really disappointing loss at LSU, narrow loss but disappointing. And then you just completely forget to show up for Florida in the swamp, and you really just get your doors blown off. And so you have to be a little disappointed that, especially seeing Georgia in the SEC championship, that you couldn't have been in Atlanta this year. However, South Carolina was really able to salvage some things out of their season, even with losing Marcus Lattimore at running back and having a gimpy Connor Shaw at quarterback. And the win at Clemson has a lot to do with that. A very impressive win with backup running backs, backup quarterbacks. Just a very gutsy win. Defense is able to hold an impressive Clemson offense to only 17 points. And now Carolina is looking at their first back-to-back 10-win seasons in school history. Steve Spurrier has become the winningest coach in South Carolina history with a win over Clemson, and you've been able to accomplish some things, and I think Gamecock fans can be proud of that, and you look forward to a pretty good bowl matchup and maybe another 11-win season, and that's again, just something to build off of. Now, as far as Clemson goes, Clemson's got to be disappointed with the loss to South Carolina, especially the way circumstances looked like they were just working out magically for the Tigers there. And they have to be disappointed with that loss to FSU. FSU I think ended up looking like the better team, but I really thought at some moments that Clemson probably could have pulled that game out. You got to be and like South Carolina, you got to be just a little bit disappointed to not be playing in the conference championship again. But a lot of good things accomplished. A 10-win season. Taj Boyd and Dalton Freeman, both All-Americans. The rare center-quarter combination. And that's something to be proud of. And, Clemson will await their bowl fate. Hopefully look to kind of exercise the demons from last year's debacle against West Virginia. And, again, there are things to build off of. The key for Clemson is going to be what happens in the offseason. Can you hold on to Taj Boyd? Can you talk him out of going to the NFL for one more year and staying around to quarterback the Tigers again? Chad Morris, the offensive coordinator, can you convince him to stay at Clemson and continue running that impressive tempo offense? Or are you going to lose him to someplace like NC State, where it's already been rumored that he's been considered as a head coach? Off-season will have a lot to do with how Clemson can go from the 2012 season into the future.